Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and we have a really interesting story to talk about today regarding Xbox and the reason that they acquired Activision and Bethesda. Obviously, there's been a lot of change to the Xbox division these past 12 months, and this new report might give us at least a clue as to why that's currently happening. Now, we're also going to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 yet again, because it sounds like it's really going to surprise a lot of people by just how much power it's packing into a handheld hybrid device. Before we get started, though, I do want to thank all of my supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships. You all will be receiving this video through early access and all future videos as well. That part is still a little bit of a learning process for me, but hopefully I will have it figured out by the time this video goes live, and you all truly, truly do mean the world to me. So just thank you so much for your support. Let's just get right into things, though, starting off with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, because review scores are currently rolling in as we speak. Currently has a 77 overall score on Metacritic with 63 reviews as of this recording, and honestly, I think that's about as expected. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a remaster that's probably priced a little bit too high for what it is. The question that a lot of reviewers seem to be asking right now isn't so much about the quality. Yes, it's a good game, but the problem is it necessary, and especially at its price tag? Despite getting no extra content, Nintendo, being Nintendo, decided to launch it at a full-priced $60, which really stands out considering the original game on the Wii was $50, and then the eventual 3DS port that launched at, I believe, $40. So I think for a lot of people, it just doesn't really sit right with them that they're launching a bare minimum remaster at full price. Yes, it's a good way to play it if you've never played it before, and it's still a good game all of these years later, but there are some red flags in how Nintendo handled this specific launch. It comes off as greedy, to say the least. If you've never played it before, though, maybe check it out, but I'd also say maybe wait for a price drop or some kind of discount later down the line. If it were $40, I think it would be a much, much easier recommend. Now, a game that I'm actually pleasantly, really excited about, though, is the Blood of Dawnwalker. Yeah, you might not have heard about this game because this is actually a new dark fantasy RPG developed by the former Witcher 3 game director and Cyberpunk quest director. They went off and formed their own studio a few years back by the name of Rebel Wolves, and admittedly, a lot of times when it comes to these new AAA studios, they don't exactly pan out, but this game actually looks genuinely incredible. From the music to its setting and even to its vibes, it gives off a very Witcher-esque feeling to it. It's mature, it's gritty, and the writing alone already has me very interested. It takes place in the 14th century Europe when the world was ravaged by the plague, and apparently there's these vampires that's been watching humans from the shadows, and now they're attempting to overthrow the feudal lords, which is something that you see in this trailer. Where it gets really interesting, though, is that the main character is kind of a hybrid of the two. So during the day, he fights as, just an everyday human, but at night, he can actually use vampire abilities. And that's a big part of the gameplay. The day and night cycle plays a vital role in this game, and you'll have 30 in-game days to save your family. But unlike other games, time will only advance when you complete a quest. So my guess here is that you'll have to strategically plan how to spend your time, almost kind of like the Persona series to a degree, but probably not necessarily as fast-paced. There also seems to be survival elements as you have to feed your bloodlust being a vampire. And I mean, if anything else, this game sounds like an incredibly ambitious project. I mean, a lot of it will simply just come down to how well they can actually execute these ideas. But I genuinely came away very interested in this game, and I think that says a lot considering this is a brand new IP that we've never heard of until now. It's honestly been a long time since a completely new IP like this impressed me this much. So I really hope this one turns out well, but you might want to go and remain patient because it's still going to be a long wait before we get to play it ourselves. It's only been in development for 2 years, but they are planning a gameplay reveal in summer of 2025. Now, here's another really interesting project. These past few years, there's been a rise in FPGA consoles, which, if you're unaware, this is a more hardware-based way of emulating games. So that basically means that it's more accurate than software emulation. Consoles like the Analog Pocket has further popularized FPGA, and now apparently somebody's tackling a PS1 FPGA console. This comes from Tokyo-don, which recently released the Switch Lite OLED screen. And you can read this announcement here, which says, the world's first affordable FPGA gaming console. Inspired by the PS1, it supports PS1 games, memory cards, and controllers. It has analog digital output, NFC, Wi-Fi, BT. It will be Mr. FPGA compatible as well, and it will also have disk support, but it's not pictured here. Pricing starts at $149 for founders and friends. Now, the reason that disk support isn't pictured is because it'll be sold as a separate add-on device, which I think is fair in this case. This will keep the price down for consumers who would much rather just install games through an SD card or something like that. I do like this idea, though. The design actually looks really good, especially if you have nostalgia for the old PS1 model. In fact, that was actually the model I had when I was a kid. So, if you like the PS1 and if you want a good way to play them on a modern TV in the most accurate way possible, then this might be worth keeping on your radar. All right, so let's go and get into the big stuff here, and this starts off with a fascinating Xbox report by The Information. I'll leave a link in the description below, but unfortunately it's locked behind a paywall. However, thanks to Resetera, we can see some of that report here, and apparently they claim that Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, considered winding down the Xbox brand back in 2021. The report stated that in 2021, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella faced a choice involving the company's Xbox and cloud gaming business. The company could either acquire major game studios to drive more subscriptions to its nascent Game Pass subscription service, or it could wind down its games business entirely, Nadella told two people at the time. Nadella took the first path, acquiring Elder Scrolls maker Bethesda Studios for $7 billion in 2021 and Call of Duty maker Activision Blizzard for $75.4 billion in the fall of 2023. Now, I do kind of feel like some of the dates in this report comes off as a little bit questionable simply because Microsoft announced their intent to buy Bethesda back in 2020 and not in 2021, as this report suggested. So I'm not exactly sure if that's just an error in how they wrote it or if they were just referring to Activision Blizzard, but clearly, if all of this is actually true, Satya Nadella was convinced to stick with Xbox going forward. I mean, again, if this is true, people can kind of say what they want about Phil Spencer. He takes a lot of heat online for some of the decisions that he makes, but you can make a very real argument that he saved Xbox not once, but maybe even twice now. Once back in 2017, when they went on their first acquisition spree, he had to convince Microsoft back then that Xbox would be worth it. And now, possibly here a second time with the Activision Blizzard acquisition. I feel like this also might explain a little as to why Xbox made some of the changes that they've made these past 12 months. I mean, I know some people don't necessarily like some of the decisions that they've made with their more multi-platform plans, but if this report, again, is actually true, then clearly Microsoft is putting a lot of pressure on the Xbox brand. They want them to deliver, and they want them to deliver now. And if anything else, one good sign that came from the Activision Blizzard acquisition is that it propelled their gaming business to being Microsoft's third largest business, and it even surpassed their Windows business last year, which is what really put Microsoft on the map in the first place. So, their gaming sector has grown to this large entity within Microsoft, and that also means that they have more eyes on them than ever before. So they probably do have a lot of pressure to deliver going forward and deliver in a big way. But again, that's where their more multi-platform plans comes into play. That's one way for them to increase their revenue, all while still increasing their Game Pass subscription count, which reportedly they actually did in 2024 with the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6. According to recent rumors, though, Xbox's future is definitely very intriguing. It sounds like they have a handheld console in a way. That's really interesting. And even a hybrid PC-esque console, which theoretically could allow it to play Steam games. So even though they have this more multi-platform approach, I feel like they do have some interesting plans that could put them in a decent position going forward with their next consoles. It's really just kind of whether or not they can actually execute these plans in a proper way that keeps their fans excited and, more importantly, invested into their ecosystem. What do you all think about this report, though? Are you buying it? And if so, do you think it justifies some of their latest decisions and where they're heading next? Now, regarding the Switch 2, allegedly, a bunch of new games leaked a little bit early. This comes from Nate the Hate, and he reported that Square Enix will be a big supporter with games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. Ubisoft is also expected to port several games, including Assassin's Creed Mirage and eventually Shadows. But the one that really caught my attention is that Konami reportedly is looking to port Metal Gear Solid Delta. I mean, this is a hyper-realistic looking game, very impressive looking visually, and if they actually manage to get this working on the Switch 2, I think that's going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, the questions that always kind of surrounds Nintendo consoles seems to be about their power and whether or not they'll be capable to run the latest AAA games. That's not something that Nintendo's had a great reputation with for past consoles. And I mean, if the Switch 2 can run games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and Metal Gear Solid Delta, that's a pretty good indication that the Switch 2 will indeed be capable of running a large portion of modern AAA games. I mean, you know, it's not going to be as powerful as the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, but it doesn't really need to be. This is a handheld hybrid console, and there are a lot of people who would be more than willing to buy AAA Switch 2 counterparts just for the novelty of being able to play them on the go. And I do think the people are underestimating the Switch 2 just a little bit. Something that we've seen these past few years is the evolution of handheld gaming. Platforms like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally are two perfect examples of what this type of technology is capable of. And in both of those cases, those are AMD machines. Nintendo's one big advantage is being an NVIDIA-based console, so they'll also have access to NVIDIA DLSS, which is the best AI upscaling technology. So the Switch 2 might really impress people by what it's capable of, but that's the good news. We're not going to have to wait much longer to see it ourselves. Here within just the next few months, we should have a much better idea as to what it can and can't do. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, have you played Oblivion? And the results here were actually very split. And, you know, that's actually not all that surprising. You know, it's been nearly 20 years since the release of Oblivion back on the PS360, and a lot of people who are gaming now just never really had the opportunity to play it back when it first launched. Also, you have to kind of consider that Skyrim has really catapulted this series to new heights in terms of popularity. But, I mean, if you go back to Oblivion after playing Skyrim, you can kind of feel its age. So that's just all the more reason that I'm very excited about an Oblivion remake. Here's an opportunity for Bethesda to bring this all-time great RPG back to a new group of fans that might have missed it, and more so to improve the original with quality of life improvements and different visual enhancements. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.